When I was a kid, my parents worked pretty much all the time, so they required me to have a babysitter. And my babysitter was always the same girl. She was 16 or 17 at the time, and she was absolutely stunning. Keep in mind, I was around 8 or 9 at the time. But there's one weekend that she came over that I'll never forget. So the night started off like usual. When she got there, she cooked me some dinner. Actually, it was grilled salmon. This girl could cook. And she was super lenient and cool, so after we got done eating, she let me watch an R-rated movie with her. But once it was time to put me to bed is where things got insane. She walked me up to my room and told me goodnight and that she loved me because we were pretty close at the time. Well, I tried going to sleep, but it wasn't working, so I started playing some video games. And after a while, I got bored and still wasn't tired, so I decided to go back downstairs to talk to the babysitter. But when I got downstairs, she was laying completely unclothed on my couch. Doing this? I was at a loss for words. She was so beautiful, and this is the first time I'd seen anything like that in real life, so I could not stop looking. But a few seconds later, she noticed that I was looking at her. So my babysitter walked me upstairs, told me goodnight, and she loved me. And after a while of laying in bed, I could not fall asleep, so I decided to play some video games. But of course, eventually I got bored, so I walked downstairs to talk to my babysitter. But when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I noticed that she was laying on the couch completely unclothed. Doing, this. And she was so bad that I could not help but sit and watch. That was until she noticed me looking at her. She immediately jumped up and screamed and put her clothes on. And I ran back to my room because I knew I was in trouble. And a few moments later, my bedroom door burst open and she started screaming at me. And then she literally bent me over and spanked me. But after she calmed down, she told me that I could not tell my parents about this because she really didn't want to lose her job. If I didn't tell them and forgot about it, then me and her would be cool. And I really liked her, so I didn't end up telling my parents. And I'm still in contact with her today. I just, haven't cracked yet. But we'll see.
Story time of why it's never good to be in a best friend group of 3. So a little background information. I was in 4th grade and I was 9 years old, about to turn 10. Now I know you're thinking, that's really young. Well, sis, I was just smart enough to see the red flags early on, unlike half of you who probably didn't see them. Anyway, so I had 2 friends. We're going to call the one Becky and the one Mia. Now let me tell you a little bit about Becky. Becky was kind of a bitch. Now anytime that she saw Mia and I having our own conversation, she would pretty much bully us. And she would have 2 of her other friends tag along and do it also, Brooklyn and Riley. So the one day we're walking to PE and Mia and I are having a conversation. And in our gym class, you had to line up in groups of 3. So it would go Mia, Becky, and then me. Well, because I wanted to finish my conversation with Mia, I decided to sit in Becky's spot. So we're sitting down and then Becky marches over to where we're sitting and just stands there and stares at us. Then she walks away and goes and sits with her other friends. And at the end of gym class, she comes back over to us. Part 2 about why it's never good to be in a best friend group of 3. So like I said, Brittany hated it whenever Mia and I would have our own conversation. And I sat in Becky's spot in gym class, and then she got mad at us because I wanted to finish my conversation with Mia. So she goes over with her other friends that literally bully Mia and I. So at the end of gym class, she walks up to both of us with Brooklyn, and she literally is just standing there. And then Brooklyn goes, "Do you need me to do it for you?" Me and I look at each other like, what the fuck is going on? And then Brittany's like, "No, I just wanted to tell you guys that I don't want to be friends with you anymore." She was like, "You guys are just so fake. Like, you never include me in anything." Which was completely not true, but we were like, whatever. So then the next day at school, Brittany comes up to Mia and I, and she's like, "Hey guys." Like, this bitch was bipolar as fuck. And we're like, "We thought you didn't want to be friends with us anymore." And she was like, "No, I just meant I didn't want to be best friends."
Story time about how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Growing up, I didn't have a really good relationship with my parents or with my brother. The only person that I did get along with was my sister. You see, we're kind of a religious family. When I was 15, I knew that I liked girls, but there was no way that I would tell my parents that I did. They would never accept that their daughter liked other girls. I basically suppressed all of those feelings for about 5 years. When I turned 20, I decided to come out to my sister. My sister was super open, accepting, and she was really loving about it. She never once made me feel bad. I asked her what she thought about me telling the rest of the family, and she said definitely not. She knew that our parents would freak. I finally got my first girlfriend a year after that. I actually met her on my 21st birthday. At this point, I still live with my parents, so I basically said that she was a best friend of mine. My parents, of course, believed me because they had no other reason not to. She would come over to my house, and we would just spend time together there. She eventually got really upset that I would never tell my parents about us, and she decided to break up with me because of it. Of course, I was brokenhearted about it, but 3 weeks later, I met my brother's brother's now girlfriend. Right off the bat, we got along really well. Like I said before, I never had a really good relationship with my brother. He suspected that I like girls, but he never came out and told me. But because of this, there was always tension between us. Also, I never understood why his girlfriend liked him because he has no personality and zero sense of humor, which is honestly why I think her and I got along so well. Anytime she came over to our house, I would just find her so funny. My brother had to go out of town for work, so she invited me to go out with her friends for lunch. Of course, I quickly accepted. I honestly didn't realize it at the time, but I was definitely developing a crush on her. She was my kind of girl. I mean, I guess my brother and I have the same type. She was funny and incredibly smart. After that lunch, she asked me if I wanted to hang out another 2 times when my brother was away. Everything was going pretty well, but after the 3rd time that we hung out, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I knew this was going to be a really big problem for me. I'm the kind of person that's always honest with people as much as I can. When my brother finally came back, she started coming over to the house more. I was both excited but worried at the same time because I knew that I had feelings for her. One day she came over, but there was nobody home. That's when I decided to be honest with her and tell her the truth. I opened up to her and told her my history and that I had a crush on her. She smiled and told me that it was okay. That's when she grabbed my hand and we started kissing. Trust me, I know that it's totally wrong because she's my brother's girlfriend, but I was falling in love with her. That's when my brother comes in and sees us making out. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my brother caught me making out with his girlfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when my brother comes in and catches me making out with his girlfriend. He instantly went berserk and started punching a hole through a wall. His girlfriend tried to calm him down, but he told her that if she touched him, he would probably end up hitting her. Luckily, no one else in the house was home, but my brother threatened to tell my parents. Like I said in part 1, my parents are very religious, and I knew that they would never accept me as I am. That's when my brother said that he had already been suspecting of me and his girlfriend because her and I had been hanging out so much. He then started calling me a bunch of names like freak and other really inappropriate things. Then the fight became about him and his girlfriend. His girlfriend started telling him that she had been miserable the whole time that she was with him and that he had been manipulating her the whole time. She told him he was even toxic, which I can believe because my brother's kind of like that. She then left the house and told him that she never wanted to see him again. My brother started asking me a bunch of questions like how long I had been seeing her. I told him that this was the first time her and I had ever kissed. Then he told me that I needed a man to teach me how to be a woman. So instead of staying and arguing with him, I decided to leave. I decided to go ahead and tell my parents the truth before my brother did. I was absolutely petrified. I told my parents that I like girls, and I told them what had happened with my brother's girlfriend. That's when my dad told me that they weren't upset that I like girls, and that they would have accepted me either way. But they were really upset that I had hurt my brother's feelings, and that I caused them to break up. They were surprisingly okay with what I had told them. I mean, after years of being petrified of them knowing the truth, I felt so free. But I also told him that my brother had been toxic towards her and that's why she didn't want to be with him anymore. My parents actually ended up being more angry with my brother than with me. But you'll never guess, a few months later my brother told my parents that he's bi. I haven't contacted my brother's ex, but I really feel like I should. I mean, I was falling in love with her. What do you guys think I should do? P.S. My brother's much happier.
Am I the asshole for kicking my wife's father out of our wedding? My wife, 26, and I, 24, got married in early July. We decided to have a small 40-people wedding where masks were required, even for vaccinated folks. It was a dry wedding because my father used to struggle with alcoholism, and I didn't want to trigger an accidental relapse. This was years ago, but I just wasn't willing to risk it. Instead, we offered virgin drinks and soda. Well, my wife's father didn't like this. My father-in-law was old friends with my dad, and they'd gone through addiction together. My dad had taken the steps to get clean, but my father-in-law hadn't and still struggled. He constantly begged us to have an open bar at the wedding, saying that he didn't know if he could sit through the wedding sober. We ignored his request and held firm on the dry wedding. Well, that's when things went south. The ceremony passes and the reception begins. Everything is going well until we notice that my father-in-law is acting weird. Turns out he had bought a case of beer and hid it under one of the tables before the ceremony began. He was pestering my dad to drink with him just like old times. I was furious, beyond furious. I immediately called him out for his inappropriate behavior and demanded that he left. He started screaming at me, telling me that I was a dumb B and the F slur. My father-in-law and brother-in-law left, but my mother-in-law was pissed. She acted as though I didn't understand that he was addicted. I knew that, and if he felt like he couldn't go one night without it, then he shouldn't have showed up. However, his behavior was completely unacceptable. My wife feels that I'm justified in what I did, but my in-laws won't even talk to me. So, am I the asshole?
I was hanging out with my friend and her kids, and her daughter was coloring right next to me, and all of a sudden I heard her daughter taking like a really sharp breath, and I looked over and she was sniffing her marker. She was just like smelling them as glory. She's 5. She was like smelling them as glory. And then she saw me looking at her and she said, "Do you want to sniff it?" And I said, "No, thank you. That seems like a slippery slope for me." And her mom was like, "They're scented. We bought her scented markers for her birthday. That's why she does that." Really miss how all you had to do to make friends in college was leave the door open to your dorm room and people would walk past it and be like, hey, cool Justin Bieber poster, do you want to come to a party we're headed to? And we would say, yeah, we want to go to a party with you strangers. And then we would go to the party with the strangers and we would be like, yay, friends forever, we both love parties and Justin Bieber. And then you'd be friends for a while. But as an adult, I don't know how to make friends as an adult. Like, I feel like I'm asking someone out on a date, and then if someone asks me to hang out, I'm like, why? What's your deal? What do you want from me? What?